Have you ever had one of those moments where you just finished leading worship and you step off the stage and somebody comes up with a huge smile on their face and they shake your hand and they say, "Hey, your guitar playing was amazing today," or "You did an amazing job today. Great job." And you're just like, I don't know what to say. Like, thanks. I was just leading worship. Well, in this video, I want to teach you how to receive a compliment as a worship leader. Coming up. Hey, Spencer here from leadingworshipwell.com. This is the place where we talk about how to lead yourself well, lead your church well, lead your worship team well, and lead worship well. So if you're interested in that, click subscribe down below. And speaking of leading your worship team well, I've got something for you down in the description below. It's the worship rehearsal blueprint. In that blueprint, I'll teach you everything that you need to know to have the perfect worship rehearsal that will lead your team well, not just musically, but spiritually and relationally as well. So if you don't know how to run a worship rehearsal, or you've just been getting together to play a few songs every week, and you're not really sure what else to do, make sure to check that out below, and that'll give you a complete plan for your worship rehearsals. But today we are talking about how to receive a compliment as a worship leader. Have you ever felt awkward, or like what I was talking about at the beginning of this video? Have you ever felt awkward when someone comes up to you and they just tell you, like, you did a great job? I mean, it makes us feel good, right? But I know personally, I never really know how to respond to that. It's like somebody comes up to you and they're like, "Man, you sounded amazing today." And it's encouraging, but I'm like, thanks. Like, that's not the reason that I was up there today. I wasn't up there to sound amazing. So I started thinking through, and this was several years ago, I started thinking through this process of how do we receive a compliment as a worship leader, because God uses those to encourage us, and the compliment is not a bad thing. But how do we take that as a worship leader? How do we respond to it? Before I get into my thoughts, I want to hear from you first. What is your typical response when somebody compliments you on your worship leading? Imagine it. Sunday morning, you just walk off stage. Somebody's making eye contact with you from across the room, and they're walking towards you. And then they give you a compliment. What do you say to them? Let us know down in the comments below. What's your typical response to a worship leading compliment? I'll talk to you in a second. Thanks so much for leaving your answer down below. Now let's get into how to receive a worship leading compliment. All right, someone has just come up to you after your service and said, "Man, you sounded amazing today." And then there's like that awkward silence where that's all they say. And you're like, what do I do now? What is the first thing that you do? Well, the first thing that you do can just be simply to thank them. Say, "Oh, thank you so much." And that's important because we want to acknowledge the compliment. I think a lot of times people just try to deflect the compliment, but that person has come up to you and given you a compliment. They're trying to encourage you, and that's actually something that we're supposed to do in the church, right? We're supposed to exhort each other, build each other up, and that's what this person is doing. And so if we try to deflect that compliment automatically, we're going to do it in a second here, but if we do that without accepting the compliment, then we're basically saying, like, we don't value the fact that they are encouraging us. So we want to acknowledge that they are encouraging us. So all you have to do is say, "Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that." You're not saying, like, "Yeah, I know, like, it sounded really good today," or no, like, it wasn't that good, right? There's a middle ground where you can just accept the compliment. And you don't have to feel bad about it. It's not prideful to accept the compliment. God is not angry at you because you've accepted the encouragement from somebody else. You can just accept it. So next time somebody comes up to you and says, "Hey, you sounded so good today, man, on that song. What a beautiful name when you sang that. When you led that song, it sounded so good." You say, "Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that." And now we don't stop there. There's more to do. So let's move on to the second thing that you do after somebody compliments you. Now we get into sort of the deflection part of the compliment, because we still want to be humble, right? And this is just truth. Like, we aren't just deflecting the praise to other people. It's going to be our team, and then it's going to be to God. We'll talk about that more in a second. We aren't just deflecting the praise to other people just so that we can say that we weren't prideful and accepted it for ourselves, but we didn't do this on our own, so our team was there serving with us, and then obviously God is worthy of all the praise that we have. So the second thing, after you say thank you, I appreciate that, we want to lift up our team, right? If you have a team, if you are serving with a team, this is the second part of the process. You say, oh, thank you so much, I appreciate that, and how about my team this Sunday? Like, they sounded amazing on that song as well. And that way, you've accepted the compliment, the encouragement, but you're also bringing your team into the equation, because you didn't do it by yourself, unless you're leading worship by yourself, which I'm going to get to that here in the next step, but you probably have a team serving with you. So we can point the person who said that to our team and say, I would love if you go and tell them the same thing that you just told me and how amazing they sound. That way you spread the encouragement around, and it's not just you receiving all of it. You're not really deflecting it, you're just passing it on to the rest of your team. So keep that in mind, thank them, and then lift up your team. After we lift up our team, this is like the most important thing, we want to point them to God, right? And we want them to know, the person who complimented us, we want them to know that we know that worship isn't just about music. And I don't think that's always the heart behind the compliment, but that's how the compliment usually feels to us, right? Like, I think we more often as worship leaders get compliments on how good we sound than on how well we led. Do you find that true? Let me know in the comments below if you find that to be true. Do you ever feel like you only get complimented on how good you sound and not how well you led? Like, more often will I get somebody who comes up to me and be like, man, you sounded amazing today. Like, that guitar playing was awesome, or your vocals sounded really good today. I really like the way you sing. Very rarely do people come up to me and they're like, man, I really appreciate like how you paused in that song and pointed us to that truth about God. Like, thank you for doing that. And so we want to point people to God. And so we take the musical compliment and we say, oh yes, I love that song. What a beautiful name, because it shows how worthy Jesus is. Something as simple as that. We've thanked them for the compliment, we've pointed them, or we've lifted up our team, and then we've pointed them to God and said something about the specific truth in the song. That way we take it away from the musical, which worship is never really about. We know that. I think most people know that, but they don't consciously think about it. And then we land on some truth about God. And in that, in receiving the compliment that somebody gives, you are leading them in worship because you are pointing them to the worthiness of God. So, thank them, lift up your team, and then point them to God. And finally, step number 4. This kind of depends on the way that somebody compliments you. This is more of a bonus step. You could still probably squeeze it in no matter how they compliment you. But after you've thanked them, after you've lifted up your team and pointed them to God, you can ask the question, like, what spoke to you today? Or how was worship good? I like to use that when people compliment me after worship leading, and they simply say, like, man, worship was great today. It's like, I don't really know what that means. Like, I want to know more. I want to know why it was great so that we can do that again every single Sunday. So ask the question, Oh, thank you so much. You know, the team really put in a lot of work to make that happen. What made worship good today? How was it great? And you probe a little bit deeper, and that gets the person complimenting you to think about, like, why was it good? Maybe you'll learn, like, there's a specific story going on, or not a story, like a specific thing going on in that person's life, and the songs that you spoke, the truth that, or the songs that you sang spoke specific truth into that circumstance, and you get to learn that circumstance, and you get to know that person on a deeper level, and then you can realize 2 weeks from now that person's still going through the same situation, and you can speak truth into that situation again. So it improves your worship leading to get beyond the, oh, worship was good today. Well, how was it good? Thank you for the compliment. My team did an amazing job, and God is worthy of all our worship. How was worship good today? I want to know more. Tell me what spoke to you this morning. That's how you receive a compliment as a worship leader. You thank them, you acknowledge their encouragement, you don't just shrug it off, you accept it, but then you point people to your team, because you probably didn't do what you did on Sunday all by yourself. Even if you aren't leading with musicians on the stage, it's just you and your acoustic guitar or whatever, there are probably like tech people helping out, or your pastor played into that worship leading moment. So lift up the team around you. Number 3, point people to God. Always point people to God. It's not about music, it's about worshiping God. And then get more information. What made it good? What did you like about that song? Why was that special to you this morning? And then you're going to learn a lot more about what the person means so that you can lead them better next Sunday. So that's how you receive a compliment. Back to that idea of your team for a moment. We serve with team members, and we want to lead them well as worship team leaders. One of the ways you can do that is through your worship rehearsal. But a lot of worship leaders don't really have a plan for their worship rehearsal. They just kind of get together to play through the songs for Sunday. And I think that we can do better than that, and that's why I put together the worship rehearsal blueprint. In that blueprint, I will teach you everything you need to know about how to lead a worship rehearsal that leads your team well musically, obviously, but also spiritually and relationally as well, so that they can grow closer to God and closer to each other and still be prepared for Sunday to lead musically. So check that out in the description below. Other than that, thanks so much for joining me today. Till I see you in the next video, keep leading worship well.